Hello, my name is Megamon, and I am a high plat to low diamond Overwatch player, and I decided to do a VOD review of myself, so hopefully you and me can learn a thing or two. Today's VOD is going to be on Junkertown. Now, some context to the match beforehand. Me and my friends were already on a losing streak, and I was getting ready for bed, so I was tired and maybe a little bit tilted. So this definitely did affect my performance coming into the game, and honestly, all I wanted to do that game was relax. But I feel like through some very intelligent switches and also just having some parts of myself just wanting to stay in the game and actually win it, some of that effort, not like just totally giving up, really made this VOD something interesting to look at. So without further ado, let's start off this VOD with me picking my comfort pick on DPS, Soldier. Starting off, we have a fairly heavy tank line that should, by all means, be able to hold a strong front line with double barrier. One thing to note is that neither of the healers I have can support me if I decided to flank or be in an extreme angle, so I need to be careful where I position. Preferably, I should stay with my front line and play this point slow, putting in steady damage for the Torp turret to finishing us off. But, well... First problem is that Pharah, which means all my attention needs to be on her not having an impact on the fight. Unfortunately, because my mechanics were all over the place, I failed to pick her off early. Not only that, I got fixated on holding high ground instead of following tanks to drop heal pack for them, and also ended up getting separated, making myself an easy kill for the enemy team.
No rest for the weary.
Now during this group phase, although I didn't record comms, I do distinctly remember someone saying, "Don't drop." It wasn't me, but that was the plan. Until Ryan dropped. Now instead of dying on point, it would have been much better to hold high ground instead of dropping down and having just the worst angles. During this next fight, I am determined to get the Pharah. Not because it's their carry, but because, well, by all means, she should be an easy pick. Unfortunately, we get the ult rush. I don't think there's much I could have done here, as they popped 2 ultimates. The good news is that I almost have Visor, and we should be up on ultimates next fight. So let's see how I use it. I am pretty indecisive on where to move, which could have gotten me to high ground. I'm also very unsure of why I decided to back up all the way over here. I could have moved closer, we had double barrier, I had plenty of protection, there was no reason for me to be all the way back here outside of my fall off range. I do think this was a good time to use Visor, but I was not in the right position to use it. If I was already moved up or taken a more aggressive angle, I could have had a much bigger play and it could have won us the fight. Knowing that my mechanics feel off, I decided to switch off my comfort pick onto Sombra to hopefully hack their tank so they can get focused, as I've noticed that being an issue. This is also a much stronger ultimate against Sigma Zarya. That's just a bad translocator. Clearly, I don't play this hero a lot. I do think that playing a conservative Sombra here was a good play. I shut down their Sigma and Lucio, giving us some much needed time. Now, unfortunately, during this game, I didn't listen to my fellow Junkrat saying Hanzo behind, so I die and the rest of my team follows. If I did listen to this call, I could have possibly saved that fight.
Been here all along.
Now, I really want to get EMP to secure this team fight to make sure that everyone can get their ultimates for the next one, but I fuck it up. Never use EMP when you're 2 down. It's not a defensive ult to make things even or stabilize, it's an aggressive ult to gain an advantage, so that was a huge mistake.
Score 0-3. Switching sides.
This round, I decided to pick Ashe because I remembered Hanzo being a large threat last round, and I decided to try to duel him with Ashe, thinking that we might be able to relieve some pressure from the front line, plus it would be nice to have some consistent damage of Ashe over Widowmaker.
One just point.
Damage boost.
I do find myself shooting the barrier a bit too much, when really I should be trying to get angled on the Bastion, which I eventually do, but it takes too long. After missing the Widow, I realized I could probably take advantage of the longer sightlines on Junkertown, and at the very least duel the Widow, as I do consider myself decent in the Widow 1v1.
One shot. One kill.
Here, I shouldn't have gone out, considering that we were already a couple people down, and I could have just stayed in spawn and called for a solid regroup. The fight was long over before I even got there. Finding the off angle here on the Widow was great, and it made for a nice, easy shot. And here, trading my life with the Lucio was, I think, pretty acceptable, but I could have moved a little bit more just to stay alive. Although I don't think there's a whole lot I could have done there. My only objective now is keeping the Widow in check, as it is my job to make sure she doesn't have any pressure on my squishies. Always remember that forcing the enemy in a 1v1 makes whatever situation your team is in even, and winning that 1v1 gives you the upper hand.
Personne n'échappe à mon regard.
Thank you, my friend.
Hello there.
Also, side note, this Orisa pick was fucking bonkers. I don't know what happened, but my crosshair just tracked the shit out of her through that chaos. I didn't actively aim at Orisa, my hand just sorta took over. I did get greedy here. There was no good reason for me to put myself so far up and feed. Even if I did get a kill, we already won the fight, and standing where they could easily shield dance around my fire is pretty dumb. Side note, if you're in a real game of Overwatch and not Widow headshots only, don't do the spinning thing, it only makes body shots easier. Also, when this Moira aggro's on me, I could have killed her if I dedicated to scoping to get a trade. Luckily, my team still wins this fight, but if I traded, it could have been done even faster.
No one can hide from my sight.
In this next combat phase, I choose some pretty poor angles for Widow, favoring the low ground, and also this tight corridor, which would be fine for Hanzo, but if I stayed bridge, I could have gotten a much better sightline. Seeing their Doomfist, I switched to Sombra to shut them down. Plus, without a barrier, the entire team should be easier to hack. Getting the hack on the Roadhog was essential to basically initiate the fight, And then after we kind of play like cowards, I could have gone in the back line with my translocator or just tried to flank more. Even denying the Doomfist, I'm not really providing a whole lot of value, even though being on the high ground is generally good. But that's okay, because really all I need to do is build EMP, and then we should get a free fight win.
See you later.
After losing that fight and escaping, I make a terrible mistake of not waiting for my team or making myself an escape TP. A huge mistake that is inexcusable under any circumstances.
60 seconds remaining.
Meteor strike!
I think my hacks here are decent, and luckily I have EMP for the next fight.
Looking for me?
Again, comms aren't in this VOD, but I did call out that next fight we do have EMP and asked if people were going to be ready. They said yes, so I entered with a 3, 2, 1, and I got ultra unlucky with the big boy hammer to the face.
Justice ain't gonna dispense itself.
Seeing as a huge EMP ended up getting wasted, I switched to McCree thinking he can be a nice middleman between the possibly flanking Reaper and shield break to help with pushing. Which, by the way, I have 0 time on McCree, so there will be a lot of mistakes. I get way too aggressive in this fight. Again, not being in favorable sight lines, being a McRight click. Luckily, we still win with overtime on the clock, and now I know that being super aggressive isn't something I can do. Positioning here is good. I think playing a backline McCree really allowed some great plays. Shining on the Reaper was essential for this fight, allowing my team to push in with less worry.
Step inside. Be alive. Barrier in place.
This next fight, I get a bit greedy and waste my stun cooldown on the Doomfist. If the Doom was better, we would have lost this fight. Luckily, I do back up and ultimately get the frag, but I also waste another flash here when I could have just shot him. Wasting utility like that is the make or break of a fight sometimes. Also, I clearly never play McCree, as my first instinct after flash is to right click every time.
Round 2. Score 3-3.
This next point, I actually mixed it up by going with Reaper, not because I had a plan, but because my friend thought it would be a good idea, so I was happy to oblige. One thing about flexing onto different characters is making sure your opponents are on their toes. If they don't know what you're going to do, they won't have a plan. Of course, don't be switching like a maniac, but sometimes variety is the spice of life. Knowing that they will be setting up on the high ground, I do want to get them off by being a nuisance, but they just sort of drop on their own with no real help from me. I also got really lucky that this Ashe was super out of position. Now here, I have an opportunity to kill the soldier, but it takes a bit longer than it should because I didn't get closer before shooting. I could have crouched, but I do ultimately get the frag since no one peels, and I'm in the clear while my team is in easy 5v4.
Targets in sight.
10 seconds.
Here as Reaper, I have trouble deciding on a target, but I should have focused the Reinhardt as Moira could easily escape with Fade, and I was pretty sure McCree had Flash. I do think that this ult was perfectly acceptable since it did win us the fight, but I definitely did it in a panic, and just wanted some of that sweet, sweet health regen. Preferably, I wouldn't have panicked, but whatever, it worked out. Also, really bad use of TP. Don't waste your long cooldowns, my friends. It's what keeps you in plat. Here, I thought it was good of me to recognize that Sim had everything set up already and played more defensively and only went forward when I knew there wasn't going to be any major threats. In this next fight, I have a really good Reaper ult. I see that they're grouped up and I can teleport to the high ground, and I can tell that there's no CC coming my way. Then bam, Brian uses his ult and I know I can Q for free because he's not gonna be with his team. During this next fight, I did make a pretty large mistake with focusing too hard on the Mei. I did call for everyone to focus on the Mei, but if I focused on the tanks, Reinhardt wouldn't have killed our Mercy, and that could have potentially won us the fight.
Score 5-3. Switching sides.
Having regained some confidence, I go back on my comfort pick of Soldier. This was also to assist with having a more consistent output of damage on whatever comp they run.
1. Attackers incoming. Stop the payload. I did a pretty standard play until I decided to chase the Zarya as it was called that she was high ground, and then I ignored her even though our Sigma said that she was moved to the Mega, and I just wasn't listening. So I ended up turning a really good opportunity to get a pick on a high charge Zarya, and ended up turning it into a lost fight. I didn't recognize that the fight was over, and Visor is a good ult to make things even, but even if I got like 3 kills, we didn't have any resources to hold there. So ultimately, it was pointless. After getting rolled for 2 straight fights, I tried to escape and potentially hold, but I should have just died on payload to prevent getting staggered from my team's respawns. I switched to Sim here on the last push, hopefully to have a more defensive edge as we have a lot more cover to hide turrets, and plus I'm getting my ultimate up, and it could win us the game. So my goal is to play safe and get ultimate. Although they have some cart progress, I'm able to get my beam to level 3 off their shield, and with that zones the Rhine from making any crazy plays.
Let them up.
And with that, we hold for just enough time for respawns and for us to press W and Q and win us the game.
Sing for me.
Victory.
So thank you so much for watching. I put a lot of care and love into this video. It would be fantastic if you subscribed and followed me for potentially more content. I'm really, really excited to do more stuff like this in VODs. I probably won't be doing too much more with Overwatch besides just the VOD reviews, but hopefully I can keep doing reviews like this and keep them as quality as I need them to be. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day.